What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of California Underground. We have a feisty show for you tonight, as you can tell by the title, which is How Bad is the California GOP? Because you got to make it spicy. That's what gets people to tune in. And we've been talking about this for a week now. We've been texting back and forth. Cynthia's been very fired up about it. But before we begin, I just want to say a couple words. It is Cynthia's last show as my co-host. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have her as my co-host. She got invited. I don't know how it happened. She just got invited on once, and then she never left. But it was all for the better. She's moving on to bigger and better things. And a story I'd like to tell is the first time I met Cynthia was at a San Diego Young Republican event. And I still remember it. It was in the middle of COVID. It was part of this like protest or something, like that you weren't supposed to be in restaurants, but we were in restaurants. And she comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, are you California Underground?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, yeah. I like your stuff." And then we started chatting about politics and all that. And then she tells me, "Yeah, I just got laid off from my job today." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." She's like, "No, I want to get into politics." I said, "Okay, well, it seems like this is the perfect time." And sure enough, Cynthia went out. She volunteered for like a bajillion campaigns, like any campaign that would take her. She's like, "Hey, I'll help you. I'll phone bank for you. I'll do that, all that stuff." For you know it, she's working for the Amy Reichart campaign. Then she's on OAN, and now she's moving on to even better position. I'll let her explain if she wants to, but yeah, Cynthia is a great example of if you are passionate about something, just dive right into it. Go, just into it. Don't give like, just give 110%. And she achieved it. So with that, I know I made her all emotional and we're trying to get this podcast started. So Cynthia, it's been a great having you. Obviously, you're always welcome back as a guest. There's always an open invitation, but yeah, if you want to share what's going on or where you're going, you can certainly do that. Or you can just say, "I'm not going to share. Screw all of you. You don't need to know where I'm going. None of your business."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm so prepared with my notes. I'm like, we're not taking any prisoners tonight. We've been, just want to speak my truth and didn't think anyways. So hi everyone. Phil, it's been such an honor. You're such a blessing in my life, you and your wife, and such great friends of mine. So blessed to have you guys in my life. And it's been such a fun journey, like co-hosting with you, and just so many things in store. So I'll share a story, and I'll share what's next for me. So along with working on different campaigns, along with working full time for One America News, I was also so I was helping a candidate, and I was working his launched fundraiser for the primary election. When you launch a campaign, you typically have a fundraiser to help, you know, raise money and whatnot. So I was working that. And I met a gentleman who will be the incoming chair for the Lincoln Club. And he's also a very successful businessman. He is known for South Bay politics. So to give some clarification, his name is Dan Hom. So if you Google him, he has a rich history in San Diego as a third generation Republican. His uncle Tom Hom was the first minority that was elected to the San Diego City Council, and then Chris Kate came after that and got elected. And then Tom Hom was also like the second Asian that's ever got elected to the California State Assembly. So anyway, so Dan Hom, he's very well known for business, for politics. He also ran for office for Chula City Council, like in the early 2000s. So I'd met him at this fundraiser, and so I was basically burning the candle on both ends. I was working like 70 to 80 hours a week. OAN, I was working overnight. So, I was doing everything that I could. And then in between, I was, managing phone calls, emails, doing campaign stuff. And then, in addition to that, I was working for Dan Hom part time at his public affairs and PR firm. So one of the races, and he's also political as well, but one of the races that, I volunteered for was, races in Chula Vista. So, one of the blessings is, and this is an unexpected blessing. I never thought that, when it's on your political bucket list and stuff, being a staffer for an elected official was never one of those, because I've just heard different stories. And, I'm very outspoken, obviously. So I was like, no, I like speaking my truth. But essentially, my plan was, after the campaign was over, my plan was to, resign from OAN, which I have done. And then also, when the campaign is over, like, aside from tying loose ends, like, it's not like you're actively campaigning. My plan was to work for Dan Hom full time. But I had a very emotional day yesterday. You know, as I'm sure, like, if anyone's ever met Dan Hom in San Diego, um, you'd be so blessed to have him in your life. He's loyal, and because of his reputation, people know that the type of quality of person he is, along with his staff members. So essentially, my conversation where I thought I was going to have a review and then we would finalize my offer, and he's been wanting for me to work for him full time, like, for months. We were just waiting until the campaign was over so I can kind of, be focused on just working for his firm. And his firm is focused on public affairs, lobbying, and public relations. So I was still going to be in politics, but just in a different capacity. But essentially, it got emotional because he was saying, because people know me and trust me and they know my staff, it would obviously be high quality. He basically, they know that the staff is quality. So essentially, he told me that, like, there's someone that wants to steal you instead. And so I'll share more details about it because I'm in the process of finalizing it. But I'll say this. Again, my goal was never to work for an elected official, but if essentially, some inside baseball, if you work on a campaign and when that person wins, you could get offered a position as part of their administration. So because I'm still in the process of finalizing things, I don't want to share it just yet, but I am essentially going to be working for someone that won an election. And so if you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, so it's Cynthia Kaui, CYNTHIA KAUI. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be revealing, who that elected official is. And but yeah, so long story short, want to share just how many doors get open. And like Phil said, that's 100% true story. I've always been interested in politics since the 2016 election. It was always just like an interest of mine. Then as the years went on, I cared a lot about it. And then, I was working in the private sector, and because of COVID, I actually was in between two jobs. So I got let go in 2020, and then I found a new job. And in 2021, I got let go from that. And then, I met Phil at the Young Republicans event. It's 100% true. And then I got offered to work for OAN, and then wanted to help candidates in campaign. And then I was working for Dan Hom and doing PR and public affairs and lobbying stuff. And, so the best way I could describe it is, I was working 70, 80 hours a week. And, whenever you have those, whenever I'm just rambling, but my point is, like, I've always had these moments where I've worked hard and I've always wondered whether it would pay off. You kind of just are banging your head against the wall. You're wondering if it's worth it. You wonder, especially in politics, in such an intense industry where you're someone that's really striving to be good, you're striving to be righteous. You wonder if you have any control or power because you want to make things better for your community. And then you have moments where you realize like how completely powerless you are and how much like you don't get taken seriously. I hope that my story inspires you to still keep at it, even though it can be an uphill battle. I'm gonna stop because I'm just gonna ramble. I'm probably gonna cry. But yeah, so I'll share more about my next moves. But essentially, long story short, I volunteered for a campaign, and because of, you know, I planted a lot of seeds over years and months, and I'm reaping a harvest. So essentially, I volunteered for a campaign, and I got offered a position to work for that person that won their election. So when it's official, if you follow me on social media, I will reveal what my next move is. But because of that position, and when you do work for an elected official, you working for the city, you might be working for the government, all that. So there are restrictions about what I can and can't say. So I can't be, well, I'm still going to be outspoken, but I can't be on like a, public forum like this again. So that's what's next for me. So
She can't be.
we're gonna leave no stone unturned tonight, and it's gonna be lit tonight.
She can't talk shit anymore in a public forum. So this is her last chance. She's got to get it all out. Yeah, I'm excited for you. The elected official is not Trump, if anybody is wondering. And I think it's, one last thing that I think is interesting. And I'm just going to talk about this. And you had talked to me about OAN. And I think you felt like you had a lot of doors closed at OAN. And I think you felt like a little disappointed, but this just goes to show you that, we're both kind of religious people that what's the old saying? When God closes a door, he opens a window. So
Yeah.
This is definitely the case of like, you thought you were disappointed. OAN didn't work out. But it turns out you ended up somewhere way better, and it's OAN's loss for losing someone like you. So with that said, let's do some trash talking on the California GOP, because you've been all fired up about the California GOP this whole week. And I'm like, damn, girl, like, man, you are fired up about what is happening or what has happened in California. You're pretty passionate about what happened in terms of like the results in California. So I'll let you start it off and like speak your truth. Kick off the show about why you're so upset at the California GOP, who's probably going to throw like a parade and be all excited about all the seats that they held on to and stuff like that. So why don't you start us off on what you think happened and what your opinion is?
Sure. So to kick it off, this is nothing personal, and to be very clear, I think this is where you and me differ, and again, agree to disagree, and we're still friends. But I'm probably more of a party loyalist than you, Phil. So, I told the party line. Very loyal to the party. I'll be very transparent. Like on my ballot, I didn't vote for any Democrats because there was no need for me to do that. So, like for example, my assembly member is David Alvarez in the 80th. Well, I found out Georgette Gomez suspended her campaign, and so because I knew that it's not like my vote was needed, like I knew David would win, I was like, well, I'm not gonna vote. So I'm a very hard Republican. And I also like have great friends that work for the state party. I know that the employees work very hard. I know that the struggle is real. I've been on the campaign side, so this really is nothing personal. My issues are more of the results. I know that everyone is extremely emotional. There's so much to blame, lots of external factors out of our control, whatnot. So I just want to lay that out there. And the next cycle, I'm definitely going to volunteer. I like to know more about what the state party does as far as like the get out to vote events. I mean, I did volunteer for a couple California Republican endorsed candidates. I volunteered for Josh Hoover and Tamika Hamilton, who are good friends of ours on the show, and then offline as well. So I had that experience of like working with the software that the state party does, and volunteering for those people. But the next cycle, I'm definitely gonna learn more and see what I can do to make things better. That being said, this was a Republican +4 year, maybe more. So I'll take responsibility on my end. I had high expectations, right? I mean, we had the 2016 where Trump got elected. And, for those that, are into politics or not, typically, we have a presidential year. And then the next 2 years in between the next presidential year in between, it's the midterm year. And usually, even if the president, you might know this better than me, Phil, but usually in most cases, even if the president is good or bad, whatever, and depending on who it is, it's usually a referendum on whoever the party's in control. So if we go back into our history, 2016, Republicans took control of the House and the Senate, and they won the presidency. And in 2018, if people can recall and do their history, especially in California, there was a Democrat blue wave. So they picked up House, Senate, and obviously Trump was still there. But even in California, interesting fact, I mean, locally, it was a blue wave also. So in 2018, in California, for the state legislature, for the lower chamber, the state assembly, the Democrats got veto-proof majority. So it's not like, the Democrats have been in control this whole, but they got the veto-proof, meaning they don't need Republicans to pass anything. They have that total control. That happened during the 2018 blue wave. So it was a very, very powerful referendum. Now, naturally, we had 2020, we had Joe Biden, and then, we did that. We had some good pickups. So after 2018 in California in particular, we lost 4 House seats. And so in 2020, we won them back / flip them, whatever your terminology is. We got that. So we did well overall in California. And, we had some other great things happen. Then we had the presidency. And so by logic, I thought 2020, the midterm year before the presidential year in 2024, this would be the Republicans' referendum. So we could kind of replicate what the blue wave did and have this red wave. I mean, we had all the big pollsters like Trafalgar, doing all these polls, even outside of California, some pickup opportunities. I mean, I was tracking other federal races. I was tracking some governorships because I knew even though state and local is important, I knew that whatever is happening nationally, that's going to trickle and impact what's going on for all the candidates down ballot. So, and I'll also add this caveat, this external factor that's out of our control. The 2 things is we had redistricting. So, it made things, very complicated because some of the districts change got harder. It also opened up some new seats. So it was an open seat, meaning there was no incumbent. So those are potential pickups as well. We obviously had the Dobbs decision. So we overturned Roe versus Wade. I get it. But that being said, I probably had some very high expectations, but I just felt if you watched our show last week, if there was ever a year for a Republican to run for office, it was this year. So that being said, as the results stand, I have my handy dandy notes. I was just so let's start with the House, okay? So, and I'll be honest, again, my high expectations, whatnot, right? So that's me. There's other people that might think try to see the silver lining. I'm just not one of those people, right? Because I had these high expectations. For me, a hold does not equal a win in an R+4 year with all the things that were going for us, because this was our referendum. This was our chance to shine. This is not, for me, a hold is not a win. Other people, they might think it's great because the majority runs through California. I agree with that sentiment 100%. But to me, a hold, and yeah, I get it. Without those holds, we wouldn't, the seat count would be down. But for me, if you're asking me what we should celebrate, it's picking up seats. It's flipping seats. So as of now, we had some pickup opportunities or targeted seats. As it stands, it looks like we're going to be holding all of our Republicans, which is good, but I'm not celebrating that. But as of now, California 13th congressional district. So John Duarte is the Republican that's ahead right now. Very, 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 very close, by the way. If it holds and he wins, that's only one pickup out of how many seats we're targeting, out of how many, like, so I'm just going to stop there because I'm just going to go off. But that's my tidbit. Those are my disclaimers. Those are my expectations. And that's my opinion on the House so far. So I'll pass on to you, Phil.
Yeah, and perfect timing because our rejoining us again from last week is Ray. Ray wanted to come back and give his opinion on what happened in the midterms and how bad is the California GOP. And yeah, just to your point, Cynthia, yeah, I think I saw a stat that this would be the lowest amount of seats flipped in a midterm because, like you said, it is historically a referendum on the president and the administration in power. This is like the lowest amount of seats flipped for a party in a so the fact that Biden gets to now say, oh, is the least amount of seats flipped and there wasn't that much damage done and X, Y, and Z. It was definitely not a red wave. It was barely a red trickle. It was a red puddle. It was, I think Ray had his episode that he just put out. I think he called it a red trickle. So yeah, it was not impressive. And in California, we should not be patting ourselves on the back when races were so close and could have been flipped and won, and they weren't. So now we get to talk about whose fault is that and who do we get to point the finger at and how bad is the California GOP? So, Ray, I'll leave you with that. Why don't you just hop right in? I know you're raring to go.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Great.
Hey, I appreciate you guys I appreciate you guys, for those of you guys that are listening, welcoming me into your living rooms. I just got out of hip-hop class, so I did the speed limit. I'm not a lawbreaker. I'm not a Democrat. Just kidding. And had to eat dinner real quick, jump on in, and I was listening to the beginning, and I get what you guys are saying, but the whole part of podcasting, and I also come from the sports world, right? Like I did a lot of sports radio, and I would cover a lot of Raider games or like the Super Bowl, right? And if you think about sports, there's a morning, mid-afternoon, afternoon, and then evening sports show talking about the same game, but each sports show, it's like a unique, different perspective on the same game or on the same play, right? So here's my respective view, and it's a little different. I see, I get where you guys are coming from. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm vice chair. I'll be going on my second term as vice chair of the Yolo County Republican Party. And what that entails is we have a little bit of a smaller county that we oversee. It's not as big as Sacramento County. And it's D plus like 20 districts for assembly and Congress, respectively. And when I started in the 2020 election cycle, I was brand new. Like going back to 2020, what I did, my thought method of getting out the vote, I'm going to burn it in the trash and just throw it away, right? I did that from learning. And here's where I differ a little bit. And I don't mean to break it to you guys. And I know, Cynthia, you've been respectively critical of Chairwoman Jessica Patterson of the California Republican Party. Here's the truth. She's going to get reelected. That's just the matter of she's going to get reelected. That's going to happen. And look, like how you said, it's not personal. Unfortunately, some do take it personal inside the California Republican Party. And another reason why she's going to get, there's a couple of factors. Jessica is backed by Kevin McCarthy. She's backed by Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet, very well respected. And the truth of the matter is there's nobody of her stature or of a stature that has similar backing to Jessica to say that, to threaten her, right? To threaten her seat. But here's what I will say. Knowing the fact that the same administration is probably going to continue into 2023, 2024, there's one thing that I do ask of them. Don't insult us by trying to find that silver lining. Well, but, no, there's no well, but. Again, I know Cynthia said it because we have to say it. I say this respectfully. I disagree with what Sean Steele did at the last convention after the recall. He said, well, there's he had was roaring, and we have all these new grassroots. We went from 3rd to number 2 as a registered party, as registered Republicans, because before we were behind registered independents, right? It was Democrats, independents, and then registered Republicans. And then he was like, now we're number 2, and we got a lot of volunteers. Okay, great. I mean, yeah, that's good. What I would have preferred, because I don't want this to be about, California GOP is bad. That's easy. That's just easy. Anybody can do that. Republicans suck. Yeah, that's easy, right? What I would like to do, or what I would like to see are tangible things. And I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means. Just off the top of my head, and we actually discussed this last time. Number 1, don't tell me that there was any form of victory. There's not. Because if you do, that's insulting. What you do is you do tell us is we took it on the chin. But because we took it on the chin, we have our own our California native who walked through the ranks of the state assembly here at the state capitol. He is now the Speaker of the House, and the House is in our favor. At the very least, he's from California. So our California Republican Party has line 1 straight to Kevin McCarthy. Fine, lead with that. That's fine. That's fair. But don't say that this is great. You say we took it on the chin. That's number 1. Number 2 is you start at next convention. What are we going to do to get at least 1 or 2 of our assembly candidates over the hump going into 2024? Number 3, you tangibly tell us we are going to target independents. We're going to spend X amount of money on independents. You have to. If you want to compete in any way, shape, form, or fashion, target specific seats. Tell the Democrats where to come in. That's what you got to do. So going back to Jessica's going to get reelected. Across the board, I mean, if I'm the California GOP, I'd say, yeah, I mean, you can get mad at us for sure. But I would also say that all Republicans across the state didn't do well. So it's not just the California GOP. That's what they would say, right? But then I would in turn also say you cannibalized a Republican Senate district where it was like 5 Republicans cannibalized each other. And now it's a dem on dem. So now there is a Democrat in a full Republican seat. That is not personally attacking. I'm just only stating the fact. That's all I'm doing. And so
what seat is that one? I forget.
It's Marie Alvarado Gill. She took out Robertson. That I don't know the Senate district, but it has Jackson here in Northern California, and it has parts of the Central Valley. It's like a really big Senate district. And then I would say, the seat that Patricia Bates was in for a long time, that's now has Matt Gunderson. He lost. Now we can easily try to play Monday morning quarterback or armchair quarterback. We should have done that. We should have done that. We can. But in reality, Jessica's going to win. We're going to have to deal with it. And I would really hope that a coalition, when I mean coalition, central committees, number 1, ask for specific things. And those specific things can be more training, because the California Republican Party has this thing called the Trailblazers, where they do train local candidates and expand that. That's number 1. Number 2, expand their reach to independent voters. That's number 2. Number 3, I would give the vice chair of the California Republican Party more responsibilities, and I'd even consider paying him. I think right now the chairwoman makes $200,000. Take a $60,000 pay cut. You don't need to make $200,000. I believe if that is the case, you need to delegate some responsibility to the vice chair of the California Republican Party, be it more fundraising, be it more targeting specific assembly seats. That has to happen. And if any of these, and look, the tangible things that I'm providing, it doesn't have to be that. These are just examples. If those tangible things do not happen by 2024, you got to go. Because right now, the overall sense, I just want to move on. I just do. And I don't mean like, oh, you suck, get out of here. Because I know that's the take of tonight's show. But mine is, I just want something different. Like in the NFL, right? Like I'm a sports fan. When a quarterback has been with the team for like 8 years and he's a little bit above average and he's okay, some people are like, okay, we just need something different. And that's my sense. That's not going to happen. But going forward, the California GOP has to give us something tangible because they're not in a seat. They're not even in the same position that they were going back to when you, Cynthia, you brought it up, where they said we won, we flipped 4 congressional seats. Like that's what they were hanging their hat on. They no longer have that anymore. They can't say we flip seats. No, not really. Like you can't say that anymore. And the last convention that we were at, what kind of took me aback is they were saying we're young, we're diverse, we're a different group than what we've had in years past. Yeah, but your results aren't like what we're seeing in Florida. You're not the Florida Republican Party. You are in a position to have to tell us what you're going to do tangibly. And I'll get off my high horse.
One thing I find, yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Ray, that you can't go into the next convention and have an enormous party and think that like we did this great thing and we held all these seats, because there were winnable seats. And Dave Smith said on a podcast recently, he said about the Republicans, if you can't win more seats in this political climate where you just got out of 2 years of COVID, record high inflation, the economy's in the tank, high gas prices. I mean, just literally, you have a dementia patient as president. If you can't win more seats at this point, then there's something wrong. And I think that's where the frustration comes from. And that's where I think Cynthia's frustration is coming from, is this was probably one of the best opportunities Republicans have had in a long time to really stick it to the Dems and take a lot of seats. I mean, the fact that they didn't get the Senate, it should be alarm bells. What the heck happened? But that's where I think a lot of the frustration comes from with voters. And one thing that that really irks me is this obsession with congressional seats in California. And I understand they make national news, they look good, they help the party on a national level and the national party.
Hit it on the nail.
I hate that it seems like the chairwoman and everybody is just, what did we do for Congress? I don't really care about Congress because, and you know, we've had friends who run for Congress and God bless them, but they understand you don't go to Congress to save California. Okay. If we're going to flip California and make California better, I don't give a crap about who's going to Congress. I care about who's flipping assembly seats and who's flipping state Senate seats.
And Cynthia, I think there are some people that should not be running for Congress and are better off running for state assembly. I'm not going to throw those names out there, but there are some people that we know that shouldn't be running for Congress. And if they want to change our state of political affairs, they should be running for state assembly. I think, Phil, you're completely right. And I even got to give credit to Cynthia too, right? Like she's on the ground. I'm on the ground, you know, trying to help our assembly candidates. And I think we all feel a frustration, right? Like we're just frustrated and we're trying to point the finger. And we both want to point the finger, but then it's like, okay, that's the easy thing to do, right? And lending to what you were saying, I think there is a whole credence to that if the Republican Party says, how are we going to change? What are we going to shift to? I think their focus goes to the California State Assembly. I have a question for Camille. She says, I wish I knew sports better because Ray's analogies are. You left me with the cliffhanger. Is it good? Is it bad? I just want to know. And then Cynthia, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you brought up the chairwoman. So I actually didn't bring it up like on the podcast at all. I don't have issues per se with the chairwoman. But you know, when I criticize the party,
you're right. I think I was just bringing it up from conversations that you and I have had in terms of like California leadership. So I think I confused the two. So just to give context to those listening.
Yeah. But but since you brought it up, you're 100% right. She is going to win re-election. The bench as far as leadership is just not there. So I agree with you. There's no other real options. And, so, if she wins, I will congratulate her, and, we're just going to move forward. I can't foresee, like you brought up, I can't foresee anyone running against her. Right. So just by default, I probably vote for her as a delegate. So that being said, we're going to have that leadership. We'll see what happens at our convention in March with the other officers. And, we'll just take it from there. Right. And we'll wish whoever wins the officers, and we'll take the party in a new direction. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So some other thoughts that you bring up, I agree with you 100%. We're not some people that are just on the podcast, crapping on people. Like, we are on the ground, we're helping people, we're trying very hard to make change. So we're not one of these people that are just influencers that are just trying to get clickbait. Like, we're actually boots on the ground, doing what we need to do to help people win. So there's huge frustrations when we're putting our life. And for people who don't know, when you work on a camp, even if you volunteer or depending on how involved you're on the campaign, your life is on hold. Everything. I can't even tell you, I've always been into social media and on my phone. When politics became my life, I've been so glued to my phone. I can't even begin to tell you how much I feel I'm always on call. I'm always getting phone calls and emails and text messages, and just feel like there's fires everywhere. So, for me personally, I work in politics, and politics is my life, and I don't expect people to make politics their life. So everything that I'm sharing and feeling, it's because I genuinely care, and I'm not someone that just speaks trash and not do anything. I actually do the work too. But anyway, so since we're transitioning to state races, so the House is whatever, right? It looks like we might only pick up one seat, but again, it's okay, 218 for the majority. It looks like when these California races get called, and then Colorado, they figure their stuff out, I think the final count might be 222 or 223, or I think 221. Guys, the majority, 218. That's pathetic. So it's gone to state politics. So you bring up a good point, Ray. For Senate, we lost that deep red seat up north. That's pathetic. During the primary, the fact that we had 5 Republicans in that primary, and now we have 2 Democrats on the ticket, that Republican hold, that's gone. And you brought up Matt Gunderson. That was a Republican hold.
He's a good dude too. I respect Matt Gunderson. Really, really smart guy. Business savvy type of guy. Yeah.
That was a Senator Pat Bates, that was her seat. So that was supposed to be a Republican seat, meaning we're supposed to get a Republican elected so that way that seat could be held. That now is going to a Democrat. And Catherine Blakespeare, if you guys don't know her, she was the chair of Sandag and Encinitas mayor. So I'm sorry if you live in that district. But anyways, so we lost a Republican seat. It looks like we might pick up and flip a seat in the Central Valley. David Shepard seems like a good guy, great candidate. I've heard him speak. He might unseat Melissa Hurtado. And I hate it how we have this great flip, but I'm bogged down because we lost 2 Republican seats. So it's we can't for the life of us have one victory without just falling on our.
And I do want to add this though, is from the frustration to add. What I'm bringing into it is I know we're frustrated with California politics, and we're here to just crap on the California GOP, and I understand where that's coming from, but I think a lot of it, obviously, we're just frustrated from national level. But I think I'll interject a silver lining. We actually, even though we're not picking up new seats, there are new assembly candidates and potential assembly candidates that are bringing in new life to the California Republican Party. We got Joe Patterson. We have Billy Yasale. I'm really hoping, what's his name? Josh Hoover. I'm crossing my fingers, right? These are the silver lining is I don't know what went into the candidate recruitment. I will say that, right? If I'm the California GOP, I would say, look, I understand you guys are frustrated, number one, but look, we do have good candidate recruitment in these hopefully the 3 candidates, and it's going to continue. And I really hope that they say we did lose, A, B, or C, whatever district, but we are going to target that for 2024. Because going forward, what I'm saying is yeah, I mean, we can bitch all day. I mean, excuse me, we can complain all day, fine, but there's no use getting out of that. What I hope I do see is, I know you're mad, but we're going to take that anger and we're going to translate it into whatever tangible things. Maybe we'll increase more trailblazer training, which is great, cool. Like, they already do that. Before Jessica Patterson came in, I don't think they had trailblazers. Like, I think that was separate, where it's candidate training. If they were to say we're going to increase that, that's great. I think if they were to say, hey, we're going to increase it because we want to build more of our school boards and city councils, great. I think we're going to do more candidate recruitment. I think we're going to add more money to our independent voters. I think going into convention, giving that hope, which I think could be there, right? And even if you like our leadership with the California GOP, another silver lining is they're not these old, rich, white men that don't have a sense of reality. That's not the case. I think they're all under the age of 40 at least, which is okay, cool, great. Like, that's a good start. And so, as a Republican here in California, always fighting that uphill battle. Yeah, it's frustrating as hell. Yeah, we lost that Senate race, but we even almost have a fourth candidate who's down by less than 1,000 votes. In her last name is Yoon in Orange County. She almost overtook an incumbent in Sharon Quirk Silva. Almost. Now, I know you're right. Like, we want wins. I don't want breadcrumbs. But if they were to go forward, they being the California GOP, and say, we're going to target that seat again, cool. Because then we can say, look, let's. Oh, and you know what? Here's my other thing. I cannot forget this. I have to be honest with you guys. What's going to continue to drag the Republican Party, even though he doesn't come here, is the presence of Donald Trump. He's going to drag the party, whether we like it or not. I'm a 2-time Trump voter. That's what I am. But as long as he is the face of republicanism, or he's in the spotlight, he's going to inherently drag us down by 5 points just by being there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my case. But again, I just came on here to say, yeah, I'm unhappy, as everybody is across the nation except Florida. But there is potential for the California GOP to move forward, and I think they're going to take. I hope. I met Billy Asaley, good dude. Glad he's in the assembly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I just feel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
No, I was going to say, like, I feel like, I feel like sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is when you lose. And I feel like that those are the times where it forces you to reflect. So for me, it forced me to reflect. So I do agree. I hope that this is, a great learning opportunity, and there are some silver linings as far as gains. So to kind of touch on your point for Trump, like, for me, like, the reason why I had such high expectations for this cycle was because I knew, like, in 2024, regardless of, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or whoever's, on the ballot for Republicans, like, it's a presidential year, right? So everyone's going to be tuned in. So, I just kind of felt like it's going to be, well, I would imagine it'd be harder. So I just kind of felt like, okay, if this is an opportunity to do it, it's now. Because I would just, I guess on paper, kind of think it'd be a little bit harder next cycle. So I think that was part of, like, my fear too. Like, I think if there was a chance to do this now. So
yeah, if the primary shakes out and Trump is the nominee, next cycle is going to be even tougher in California.
And I'll be the first one to say it. If he is the nominee, I would overtly say you can't blame anybody in the California GOP. Like, I'd almost give anybody a pass. And you know what? And let me say this too, is I have, like, a good friend of mine is on the board of the California GOP. And I said, you're my really good friend. But if I don't see results, I'm going to call you out, because it's not personal, right? And if I was on the board, let's say I was on the board of the California GOP and we weren't producing results, I hope I'd get called out, because we're just passionate about it, right? But if Trump is the nominee, again, 2-time Trump voter here, we're in California, it would be difficult I would have to handicap. And I'll even say this. if Trump is the nominee and the California GOP, we do well despite that, I would say, damn, major kudos to them. They deserve it.
Yeah.
Right. Because,
I agree.
You know what I mean? But overall, it's like this. I want us to do better as a party, as a central committee. And I can only imagine, like, to me, there's only way up. I hope, maybe, but.
At what point does it feel like the California GOP is just constantly on defense and never on offense? Does that, I mean, I guess I feel like, you're already down to what, 23-24% of registered voters. You're in a desperate position. It's not like you're defending 48 or 47% of registered voters and you're defending all these different. It seems like, in my mind, it just feels like the California GOP never goes on offense. And they're so worried about, we have to hold these 4 or 5 seats in Orange County, these 4 or 5 congressional seats in Orange County. And we have to hold these couple assembly seats and couple Senate seats. And it never seems like they go, well, this is a winnable race, or this area is interestingly purple. Why are we not going on the offense more in these areas and forcing the California Democrats to go on the defense? That's my thing. And I'm genuinely curious because I feel like, I think that's what people get frustrated about is year after year. It doesn't seem like you're not really going after anything. It just seems like, we're fine with where we are. And the fact that we held all this stuff is okay. And okay, we'll on to the next one in 2 years. So that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm genuinely curious.
That's a fair question. And I had to put some deep thought into that. Again, going back to, we're in a very blue state and we don't have a cash cow like the Democrats do. Right. So I could easily come on here and say, we need to target independents. I mean, that's easy for me to say. Right. But, peeling back the curtain, I mean, what are our respective resources to target independents like Democrats do? That's number one. Number two is we're always on the defensive. I've seen Jessica Patterson give interviews. She's a good interviewer. Like she's good, she's not terrible or anything like that. She's good. I would, again, going back to, I am trying my best to stay away from they suck because that's easy. What I would like to say is, you're not doing that. I hope you do this. So the question is how do you go on the offensive? How do you go on the offensive? Because I just think seeing something like, we tried this at this time, now, meaning we tried this here's an example of, we tried this, right? They implemented the Trailblazers over the last 2 years. They integrated, right? Am I right? Where you're training candidates. Great. Okay, you integrated that. Now, what's your next step? The next step is, I don't know, maybe messaging. What frustrated me, and I mentioned this on the last podcast, a lot of Republicans said that inflation. That was across the board. Inflation sucks. Okay, well, what are we going to do? Maybe going on the offensive is, do you want it to be, are you a small business owner and you want to operate, you want to make it easier to operate business here in California? This is why you should vote for us. That's just an example. Is that what we mean by going on the offensive? Because again, I want this to be constructive. How do we go forward and not just a bitching session? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess I get tired of hearing, oh, well, no one ever gives money to California and there's nothing here for us. Like, we're kind of on a shoestring budget. But you know that Trump raised $100 million.
And he only gave himself. 12 million of it to candidates and kept the rest for himself.
So you have Trump who's sitting on $85 million. You have Mitch McConnell who's sitting on tens of millions of dollars. It doesn't seem like there's a lack of money. It just seems like we're not directing the money in the right spots. And this sort of ties in with the tirade I went on, the TikTok I made about Robbie Starbucks. And I don't care if that's not his real name. I like calling him Robbie Starbucks because it's funnier. and to him saying like, just retreat, just give up on blue states, just, you know, run to your red state and hide in your red state, and then we'll just fortify the red states. You know, like forget that. When he's all upset too, forget that. Forget the blue states. It's not worth fighting over. And to me, it just seems like no, like we need to stop pretending like we'll just give up on blue states and we'll run to red states. That's a defensive mode. That's a we're trying to hold on to the, and that's sort of like emblematic of California GOP. Is like we're not going on offense. We're just going to hold this little bit of red that we have here and there. When in reality, forcing Democrats to go on the defense in California saps them of resources in other places across the country. And look, we're the political nerds who go pour over these election results and know that there were plenty of races that were within
full
5
disclosure
points.
here, I may be a political nerd and I still don't know what I'm talking about half the time.
Yeah, we're
I'm just talking about
nerds.
myself.
Yeah,
So,
I don't even know all. It's most of the time it's just me rambling into a microphone. But you know what I'm saying? There's plenty. I'm looking at this Matt Gunderson race. That was within 5 points. That's a close race. And there's plenty of those races up and down California. And it's like, boy, if they just had $100,000 more to send out a couple more mailers, or maybe they got a couple more commercials on TV, would that have swung that 5 points another way? So that's what I guess my rambling.
Can I say something real quick? Because I don't want this to slip my mind. I know Jennifer Thorpe just said San Diego GOP missed the entire parent movement entirely. They noticed it in the beginning with Youngkin. Okay, here's my thing, though, is here in where I live, there was, they call themselves the Mama Bears or whatever, right? And they want to take back their schools. And it was just a group of women, like 40 of them or 60 of them. And they met at our headquarters here in Yolo County. And we have 7,000 square feet headquarters. And they met one time because they were outraged. And I wasn't able to make the meeting because they asked to meet there. And it was on the weekend. And after that meeting, I said, well, what came of it? And they and my chairman goes, well, what do you mean what came of it? Did they sign up to door knock? Did they sign up to have any parents that want to run for school board? How did they turn this anger of being mama bears or just angry at the school board? How did they translate that to make a difference here? And that's what me as a vice chair, that's my responsibility, right? Like, I don't need to go to the California GOP for that. I go to my community and what do I make a difference here, right? And I found 3 school board members that we founded here in Yolo County and 2 city council members here at the hyper local level. But those 40 to 60 women, parents, they met, they ranted, and then they left. Like what did they do? Yeah. And I don't know, maybe in San Diego they were there for the taken and nobody wanted to bring them in. I mean, that could be happening too, but it goes both ways.
Yeah. And then to touch on that point too, as individuals, and one thing that's
great too. I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to say we had at least 30 parents running for school board. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's okay. And I think, for those that are listening to, like, as voters and as individuals, like, apparatuses and whatnot, that's another thing. But as individuals and things that we can control, for me, and one thing that I say, like, voting is not enough. I think the string of, like, how we're trying to break down, like, what can we do to make the Republican Party better moving forward, be the change you want to see within the party. Like, it's not enough to vote. So one thing that, we're pointing out how there's all these potential opportunities and, where things drop the ball. Like, not everything's on the candidate's fault. Not everything is on the California Republican Party's fault. Like, there's a lot of external factors too out of our control. But on voters, like, what are things that would have helped the campaigns make it across the finish line? Well, look at yourself. Did you donate to a candidate that you liked? Did you help volunteer? Did you help phone bank for them? Did you help door knock? Like, at least at the very end, like, can you at least go to bed at night knowing you at least helped? And, I think that's something that, something that all of us can do and walk away and know that at least we did our part, instead of just complaining about how things are wrong. That's my message that I would want to say is, we had all these potential opportunities. What could have helped move it across the needle? Well, the one thing that I know that can help us is, did we at least help them? Because I can tell you from the campaign side, like, if we had more money, if we had more help, like, I think about like all these different ways on how, all these great people that I know put their lives on hold, whether they're staffers or the candidates. What could we have done to help, win?
One thing I've seen recently, and maybe this is a silver lining of us hitting rock bottom, maybe not rock bottom, but us getting our noses punched in, is I think the tide is turning on mail-in ballots amongst Republicans and conservatives. And I'm just waiting for the rhino emojis to show up in the chat. But I've said this before, I said this years ago. I would always get my mail-in ballot, and I would fill it out at home, and I would drop it off at the polling location. And I think we've got to get better at conveying this message and getting the ground game going, that we have to get people to show up early, and we have to get people to hand in their mail-in ballots. Because at this point, that's what it's going to take to win. That's the game in California. I'm sorry. I know people don't like it. I know there's a lot of people who are like, and back in my day, we showed up and it was one day and that was it. And we voted at the local school. And it's like, yeah, okay. But that's not the game anymore. We got to get as many ballots as possible, and we got to mitigate any crap that happens on election day that could screw anybody over. So I'm glad to see that conservatives are starting to come around on that and telling people, like, this is the game. We got to play the game, and we got to get better at it, because
we missed 2 cycles of that, but sure. I'm glad we're finally catching on.
Yeah, it only took us 2 cycles.
Yeah, I mean, I would even, you know what? I was pro walking in and doing my ballot minimum, a 1 day before. Like, I would never do 2 or 3 days before. I would never do that. That's just not in my nature. I wouldn't, I would go on like a Monday or Tuesday, never before. However, what is his name? The former chair of the GOP, is it Ron Naring? He had a thread the other day that said, actually, it is more conducive for Republicans to go 3 to 4 days in advance, at the very minimum, drop off your ballot, or go 3 to 4 days in advance, because what it does is it saves the GOP money, because once you vote, you're taken off of our roll. We don't have to call you anymore, right? So it's like, once you vote, like, that's good for Republicans. And I didn't take that into consideration until a day after voting day, where I'm like, okay, at the next election cycle, I'll vote on a Saturday or a Sunday. What I will not do, and I will never do, I will not vote 2 to 3 weeks in advance. That's absurd. That's crazy. That's asinine. That's undemocratic. And I'll even say this. In 2016, I changed my vote from a no vote to Trump 48 hours before voting in 2016. I was going to leave my ballot blank because I didn't trust Donald Trump. I thought he was a fake conservative. I thought he was just going to come in, say he was Republican, and then resort to liberal policies, being from New York. But what got me at the end is I saw Hillary Clinton's interview that said she was for late-term abortion. And I go, that's insane. You literally want to slice up, you want to, I'm trying to keep my words clean because of professional reasons, but she was just pro-choice up until almost the 9th month. And I said, there's just no way. I'll take a chance with the guy who has no political experience and is shooting at the hip and says he's pro-life. I'll take that chance than you possibly becoming the president, and you want to have an abortion by the ninth month. Screw that. And that was 48 hours before Election Day when I changed my vote from blank to Trump. But going back to, I'm all for now Republicans voting 3 to 4 days beforehand, not 3 weeks.
And to add to your credit too, the one thing that, that the California Republican Party did well this cycle, and I mean, they were so the party and different candidates in Southern California, so 2018 ballot harvesting became legal. So what they did was they're like, okay, well, we're going to play this game too. So in 2020, they had the ballot drop boxes, in San Diego and Orange County, churches and different places started ballot harvesting as well. I worked on a campaign, we ballot harvested as well. I know other candidates in San Diego and different churches, and Orange County did the same thing. And one thing I appreciate that the California Republican Party did was they messaged on educating their mailing list on why Republicans should vote early. And the biggest thing, and to kind of elaborate more on Ray's point on what the former chair said, so most of the time when you look at the numbers of different candidates and the districts that they run in, I mean, give or take, Republicans are maybe like 20, 30, maybe 40%. So, and then the rest are Democrats. And then you have the no party preference, which is kind of up in the air. Like most of the time they swing Democrat, but there's areas of opportunity, but most of the time they're voting Democrats. So it's hard to tell who they're voting for, right? So imagine this, we're already in uphill battle in most of these races. If that 20, 30, 40% do not vote, we don't have a standing chance to even make it in single digits to make a race competitive, along with also trying to chase Democrats to see if they can vote for us, along with trying to chase the no party preference, which tend to lean Democrat, see if they'd be open-minded to voting for a Republican, trying to mobilize them and persuade them. So, it's frustrating being on the campaign side when you're looking at, your budget and you're looking at how people are voting and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know like how many Republicans are voting, are they voting, or even like you don't even have to look at any numbers. You could talk to your loved ones, have they voted yet? And it's very frustrating. It's scary, like having to spend all your resources on, turning out people to vote. Go ahead. And that's it.
As you were talking, my wheels started spinning. Let's do this, okay? Now, yes, have I been critical of the California GOP in the past? Oh, I mean, yeah, of course I have. And now my take is, how do I have a different take? And here's where I'm trying to have a different take. Cynthia, let's look back at our respective game plan as Republicans, the state party and local level, in the 2020 election cycle, and now. How has our plan of attack and infrastructure, how has it been different from 2020 to now? Is it better? Is it worse? Did we add something and we just didn't get the right result? Like, how are we different from now from 2020? Like, are we the same? Did we grow? Do we have more capabilities? You know what I mean? Because another thing that we have to take into consideration is that in 2020 we had different district lines, right, than we do now, right?
Yeah,
so
and that's one thing we touched upon in the beginning too. Like, there's factors that are out of anyone's control, right? The Dobbs decision and redistricting.
Right. So that's what I mean. Like, I am frustrated, but a lot of that, 3/4 of that frustration is from across the country. I can almost make the case that we bucked the trend almost, in terms of we picked up the Duarte seat, right, against Grayson.
They haven't called it yet. It looks like but it does look like he's on track to win. So we're
Duarte, the Republican, right?
Yeah, John Duarte.
Yeah. So and here's why this is why I bring it up. At the I don't know what convention. I think we were in Anaheim.
So it's 20. So that was in April. You're talking this year, right? Okay, or was this not
the one in San Diego? Then it was the one in San Diego.
The one in that was the one right after the recall, September 2021.
That's right. The reason why I bring it up, the reason why I ask how different are we then from 2020 to now, is the one thing that was introduced to me. Maybe I'm just the new kid on the block and they've always had this and I'm just figuring it out now. But what is new to me that we do have access to, I think you were mentioning it, we have Campaign Sidekick that allows us to see who voted and who hasn't voted. And if they haven't voted, right, like let's say there's 4 days till election day and San Diego County has updated and you've talked to Joe Schmo. You have literally talked to Joe Schmo 3 different times and you see he has not voted. You can now call Joe Schmo using Campaign Sidekick and say, I heard you haven't voted yet. Can I come pick up your ballot? That is a new tool that in this election cycle is new to us. So maybe it's just my nature trying to be too much of an optimist, because when you go to like football speak, like again, I'm going back to my football roots, there's like a rebuilding era, right? You get maybe you have a new quarterback or you have a new head coach and they don't win the first 2 years. It's really like the third year where you really start seeing progress. So maybe the question is, in football speak, is the California Republican Party going in year 3, where in 2024, we're going to start seeing results because the new things that were implemented are just last election cycle? You know what I mean? Like all the things that we have is just so new that of course we're not going to have a red tidal wave in California. Think California. Can I also make the case that when we have the red wave, that measurement should not be a measurement for California? Like California should have a different measurement just because we're blue. That like the measurement that we have here, I can make the case should be different from like the Pennsylvanias, the Floridas, the Ohio's. And then number 2 is we have these new capabilities that we are now like calling, phone banking and all that. The trailblazers that I've mentioned 3 or 4 times. So it's like, is it because we just got those in 2020 that we're starting to instill it at the grassroots level? I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to be too much of an optimist. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
I would say, as a Raiders fan, Ray, you should know a lot about rebuilding.
Former Raider fan.
Oh, former Raider fan. Okay. I was going to say,
don't get me started on that. Hey,
rebuilding football teams.
For a background, for those of you guys that are listening in, I used to be a season ticket holder for the Raiders. I used to sit in the black hole, and I used to put my face paint on, shoulder pads, and I used to go by the name Dr. Death, and I made the cover of Sports Illustrated. Did I ever show you guys?
No. Oh, I've seen it.
So, yeah, I made the cover of Sports Illustrated. I've been on ESPN Outside the Lines, and I season ticket holder. And that's how I actually got into politics, is because of the Raiders and Oakland politics, right? And so that's why, like, when I see things, I almost analogize it with my experience in Oakland. And like, and you're right, rebuild after rebuild after rebuild. Or I'm like, I was thinking even today at the gym, man, I just love the abuse. Like after every, I mean, I'm sure Cynthia can relate to this. After every election cycle, I'm like, screw this. I'm not doing it again. 3 weeks later, all right, let's go. Like, that's just how it is, right? After every losing Raiders season, 4-12, 3-13, 8-8. All right, give me some more. And it's like, give me 1 second. I'm going to show you. Hold on.
I mean, I understand. I'm on the other side as a Giants fan. We've been rebuilding for several years, and now we're 7-2. So, all the people in the chat who are like, I don't know what you're talking about. What is this sports stuff you're speaking of? So, we're taking a little interlude here.
That's me right there.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
And see, it's called Football in America, the State of the Union, because if you know, this is around the Kaepernick era, and I took a stance, and I've always saluted the flag, always. In my, I take off my hat, I had my shoulder pads, my face paint, and I somehow because I'm conservative by nature. Screw the Republican Party. I don't care about it. It's just by my nature, I've always inserted my conservatism. And what instilled my conservatism, I have like 12 of these. Thank you. What really instilled my conservatism is going to Oakland City Council and seeing how they operated. And it wasn't until later on where a lot of my Oakland friends found out I was conservative and they were just blown off their rocker. And I told them, I'm like, your city council has no business members on there. Nobody knows how to operate a business. And you know what they're doing in Oakland? They're having a tax on all small businesses.
Not surprising.
And
But at
I
least they're
tell
not
you
giving
this.
away free money to transgenders.
Well, you know, and here's the reason why I bring it up. Is if it starts in Oakland, if it starts in San Francisco, that's the breeding ground till it gets to a city near you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to go back to, you know, your point about you're not a big fan of, like, you don't want people voting 2 or 3 weeks earlier.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. And you know why? Let me tell you why. The people that did that probably voted for John Fetterman before the debate. Imagine if they waited to vote till after the debate.
Right. I think the issue is we're looking at it through our political eyes, where I make a whole big deal out of, like, when I fill out my ballot, I pour myself a drink, I get my laptop, I'm looking at who the Republicans endorse, who the libertarians endorse. I look at all the different propositions, I read them. That's like through our lens, is we're watching politics and we're going, okay, we're watching every single race that we're going to be voting for up until the end. And we go, okay, now we can make our decision. There's probably, I would venture to say there's a good amount of people who, like you said, just go, hey, John Fetterman's the Democrat. I'm pulling the lever for the Democrats. Let's get out of here. And there's probably a good amount of Republicans who are also, hey, if it's a Republican, it's got an R next to its name.
If it's Herschel Walker,
they're pulling they're pulling the lever for Herschel Walker just because it's got an R. So there's probably a good amount of those party loyalists who I would say, if you're going to vote Republican, you already know you're going to vote Republican. The minute you get your ballot, just fill it out and return it. Because if you you're just implicitly like, hey, I'm just going to vote Republican. I don't need to know their policies. I don't need to know all their stuff. I just know that I hate Democrats and I'm going to vote Republican. So
I'll tell you why I disagree with that. Is
it because of the Raiders comment?
No, not at all. The reason why I disagree with that is because it's not just Assembly and Congress and Senate races that are on your ballot. You have school board and city council seat and supervisor seats as well that are nonpartisan, right? And so, like, here, you know, like, I mean, it wasn't the case here where I live, but there were 2 Dems running. One is a little bit more moderate than the other. If I was going to vote for one, I'm like, yeah, he's got my vote. But for some reason, he actually came out against something that I'm really against, rent control, right? Let's say I was actually planning on supporting him, and he says, you know what? We actually need rent control here in West Sacramento. I would go from, and let's say he said that 4 days beforehand. I would literally go from, I'm going to vote for him, to I'm leaving it blank. And races here are decided within 5 votes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but no, if you want to talk about like the Congress or those national races and you want to fill it out, you might as well 2 weeks beforehand. I understand that. But those local races, I would wait. That's just me though.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that the person who's just gonna pull the lever for red or blue, I don't know if they're that interested in the local races and the nonpartisan stuff. I think they're just pulling the lever. And I don't think they're going to put that much thought into, oh, who's running for county supervisor, who's running for tax assessor. But even though here in San Diego, Jordan Marks won, which is awesome for us, he was already endorsed by the Republican Party. So you get your little county party sheet that says these are all the people who you vote for. Here's the people you don't vote for. Don't vote for this guy. And most people will probably just go, okay, that's who I'm voting for. Check, done. Okay. And those ballots are in. So I don't think I think it's better to get those voters early, like Cynthia is saying, to save money, to focus on those independents who are still unsure at the end of the day, who are swingable, who you could possibly win over, rather than going after Joe Schmo, who maybe a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, who you've
And
called
hasn't
3
voted yet,
times
right?
and hasn't voted, and you're calling him up saying, "Hey Joe, why haven't you voted?" "I don't know, I'm busy. I got stuff to do. It's bowling night," or something like that. And it's like, okay, you could have just handed in your red ballot 2 or 3 weeks ago, saved me time. I could have moved on to
Yeah,
the
fair.
independent. So,
Fair. That's fair. Yeah.
that's just there's
And
always going to be a block of just the party loyalists who are going to vote for one side or the other. They might as well just get it out of the way 2 or 3 weeks earlier and save everybody the trouble.
can I say something, guys? Because I actually have to get going. I do appreciate you guys having me. There is one thing that is frustrating, that at some point, does the discussion at the federal level have to be brought up where there is a type of voter integrity laws on the national level? Because as a Republican, small government, I always want everything to be at the local level. But the reason why I say that is we are the most advanced, not just country, almost the most advanced state, not only in the union, but we are our own respective, like our own respective economy, like the fourth largest economy in the world, right? How the hell are you able in the 90s, okay, where there's pre-internet, no iPhone, you're able to tally votes within like 24 hours, but you have the best technology on planet Earth dragging out for 2 weeks, nonetheless. The California GOP can't really do anything. And if you have a blue state like California that can just run roughshod and do whatever they want, at what point is there a national law that keeps both red and blue states in check? That's just across the board. Whereas, for example, they have to update votes, right? The reason why I say update votes is campaign sidekick. When we call people, right, they may have voted already, but the Yolo County registrar where I live, they take their sweet ass time in updating who has voted, because they don't have anything to answer to. There's no law on the books to say, we got to update the votes right now, because there's no ramifications for that, for not doing it on time, right? So what I'm saying is on a national level, is there an introduction to where all registrars across the country have to update votes at X amount of time? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but at some point there has to be, because I think that's just unfair to the American people, especially here in California. They were waiting until Friday for 50,000 votes to drop in the most advanced country in the world. That's crazy towns. And that's it, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys having me. And hey, feel free to follow me on Twitter at It's Ray Perez. I'm also on YouTube and on podcast On My Mind with Ray Perez.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you so much for having me. I know I bloviated, but we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye. So, yeah, I think there's work to be done in the sense of California GOP has to, like I said, I think it's good that conservatives are starting to come around to this idea of we got to start playing their game. I think for too long, for too many cycles, for at least 2 cycles, people have been saying, "Oh, it's mail-in ballots. That's what's screwing us." And my feelings about election fraud and all that.
Yeah.
You got to play the game. I'm sorry. Don't show up to a baseball game with a basketball in your hand and then complain when you get blown out because you're not playing the right game. Like, that's just the bottom line. So hopefully they learn from this and go, okay, in 2 years, we're going to tell the Republicans, start getting, if you're ready to vote and you know who you're going to vote for and you're dead set on it, go out and vote and get that ballot in as soon as possible.
Yep.
Fill it out and just do it.
And hey, if eventually, if we want to change those laws, who wrote those laws in the first place? The state assembly. So if we want to fix anything for elections, we need to flip seats to people that care about election integrity and, want to be able to do that. So I know I know that there's going to be more ballots that drop tomorrow. So I think hopefully we'll get good news on that side. And there definitely is a lot of data to look through, like as far as some general wins for California. So hopeful about that. So there definitely, it definitely wasn't all bad, but again, for me, this was probably my fault. I just had extremely high expectations just for myself and just in general, and we fell short of those expectations. Not everything is the California Republicans' fault. There's things. I mean, if anyone actually gets to know me, I rail on everyone. Right? It's not even just like the party apparatus. Like I definitely have railed on the grassroots. I've railed on America First people. I have railed on these people they call rhinos. I have railed on the voters themselves, because my biggest pet peeve is when people complain and they refuse to not do anything. So I do think it is incumbent on people that do care about politics. We need to empower people, inspire people to be involved, and to be the change they want to see in their community. Like, you're the party. We're the Republican Party. We change it. And that's, my final thoughts on my last podcast here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're all great points, and we could just keep talking about this all night long. And we went for an hour and 20 minutes, so we're having these nice long sessions. Yeah, there'll be more to talk about in 2 years and see where we go, and we'll see. I think it's March is when the California GOP convention is, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, it's in March. It's going to be in Sacramento. So I'll plug that there. So yeah, like, delegates can go, but if you are not a delegate, you can still go. I want to share that with people, because if someone from the California Republican Party didn't tell me, like, oh, if because I thought like only certain people in politics would go, right? But because of this individual who is one of the vice chairs for the California Republican Party, she told me about it. And so I went, and we live in San Diego, right? So the last convention after the recall was in San Diego. It was in September 2021. So I want to plug that out there. They switch it, I think that there's 2 in the off year and 1 during election years typically. So they switch it up to be SoCal, NorCal, to kind of be considerate of everyone from across the state. So the last 2 was in SoCal. So this next one is going to be in NorCal. It's going to be in Sacramento. But if you've never gone before, I definitely encourage you to attend, because there's a lot of great workshops. You get to meet all the grassroots activists, all these people that you talk to online. You get to meet them in person. There's a lot of pundits that go, elected officials. So you'll get to learn a lot. So I definitely encourage people to get involved and, see what they can do to help.
And I might actually go to this one. So
yeah,
stay tuned for that announcement. But so I want to ask, Steve asked, is drop-in mail-in ballot at the polling place the equivalent of mailing it in? I don't know if it's the equivalent of, it's just like a dropped off ballot. Is that like, do they count as a mail-in ballot? I just personally like doing that because I get to take my time and I don't have to deal with the electronics, because I voted in this past presidential election. I voted for the first time in person at one of the electronic things, and it was an absolute disaster. Or the recall, that's what I voted in for the first time. It was a disaster. The candidate I wanted to vote for wasn't even on the list. I had like 3 poll workers touching my ballot. It was just, it's not good. Like, it's not the best thing to go vote in person, in my opinion. So I like the paper ballot and drop it off. So I don't know if it technically counts as a mail-in. They take it from that polling location, and then they go take it directly to the register. So someone said, how does the California GOP make inroads into LA, who despite all crime elected Karen Bass over Caruso? Well, I think we got to look at how Caruso shakes out, because there's a lot of stuff you can read the tea leaves and see, like, where did Caruso play well? Was it closer than we thought? Is it policies that people gravitated towards? And you have to kind of go next cycle and think about what he said and what was successful for him. LA might be a place where you just have to start running what I call dinos, Democrats in name only, which I think Caruso was. Like, Caruso is basically a dino. He was a Democrat in name only. So anyway, so with that said, it's been about an hour and a half. So I guess we're going to end it here. Cynthia, again, thank you for all of the work you did on this podcast. Honestly, all those great guests that we've been booking, it's all thanks to Cynthia. It's all her connections. You know, it's not me. Cynthia's the one who's been able to get all these great people and all these great guests on the show. Hopefully, I'll still figure out how to do that after Cynthia's gone. But with that said, Cynthia, do you want to say any final things or close us out for the evening?
Yeah, just thank you so much, Phil. I'm gonna keep it short because I would get emotional, but you know, I felt great because I got to say my piece, and then I liked having Ray on here because he shared his perspective. Um, at the end of the day, I think you know everything is just emotional, and like I said, I take that the celebrity video. I take responsibility. I don't look at that phrase the same again. I take responsibility. I had high expectations, and and again, like as Ray pointed out, like it's a presidential year, so I was just like, listen, like we need to do stuff now because 2024 is going to be lit, like, and it's just going to be hard. So that was my concern. Everything that they share, it always comes from a place of wanting things to get better. It's nothing personal. I don't care about making enemies in the Republican Party. Phil is a good friend off air, so he knows that, like, I there's drama within the party, and I never intend to burn bridges from people. I mean, I have friends who are less conservative, more conservative than me. I don't care. Like, as long as you are a decent human, I could care less. So, any rants that I have today, it's really just nothing, right? And hey, like, if there's things that I don't know, educate me, because when I learned things, I was able to change my opinion, and then I was also able to have the opportunity to educate people on it so they understand how things work too. So long story short, at the end of the day, the party is this. There's things we can't control, there's external factors, but as a voter, we have a chance to make a difference. Like I said and alluded to multiple times, it is not enough just to vote. You do not have to make politics your career like me, but at the very least, like, can you be a volunteer? Can you phone bank or door knock like once or twice for a candidate, like one weekend? Can you donate $5, $10 for someone? Because as we alluded to, there were so many close calls. Imagine if people had more help. Imagine if people had more money to be able to take them across. Those are things that are full in your control, that you can make a difference or impact in. So, if you guys want to keep in touch with me, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's CYNTHIAKAUI. I'm going to be, and like I said, just over the next few weeks when I finalize things, I will share, what I'm up to. So you could follow me there. And thank you, Phil.
Awesome. Well, as I always finish out every episode, if you like this, make sure you text at least one person and share it with them. That's the best way to support the show. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, review, all that stuff. And we'll see you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.